USC sees its oldest rivalry come to an end this week as the Trojans square off against the Stanford Cardinal for the last time as conference foes. Can USC beat the Farm to end this series on a high note, or will Stanford find it in them to spoil USC's quest for a perfect season? It's USC, it's Stanford, one last time. Let's go. What's up, guys? My name is Gabe and welcome into the Trojan Blade. We are back for game preview number 3, and this time we are of course looking at USC's conference play debut against the Stanford Cardinal. But before we do get into it today, I do want to thank SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. College football season is here, and guys, as we win more and more games, tickets are only going to get more and more expensive. So the time to buy is now, and when you use my promo code TrojanBlade at checkout, you will get an additional $20 off your first order. So thank you so much, SeatGeek, and thank you all so much for being here today. Let's get into this. Okay, so for these conference games against teams that aren't going to the Big Ten with us, I'm adding a new segment to the previews where I just give you my thoughts and fondest memories of the matchup between SC and whatever school we're talking about. So with Stanford this week, this one is very sad for me personally. I was born in 1998, so when I first started to become aware of football at around 2004, Stanford was an absolute doormat. But by the time I reached my formative years, they were a juggernaut. Those games in the early 2010s were classic. My favorite in-person USC memory ever is the 2013 Stanford game. I never thought I would see the Coliseum field get stormed by Trojan fans, but it happened. I'm going to miss this matchup very much. The history is off the charts, obviously, with this game dating all the way back to 1905. If someone told me we get to permanently have an old Pac-12 school as a non-con every year, Stanford would be my pick 10 times out of 10. So make sure to let me know your fondest Stanford memories down below, and let me know if you'll miss playing them. Alright, but let's dive in here and meet the Stanford Cardinal, and as always, let's start with the head coach. So Troy Taylor is the head man in Palo Alto. This is his first year on the job, taking over for longtime head coach David Shaw. Taylor just wrapped up turning Sacramento State into one of the better programs at the FCS level, and prior to being at Sac State, he was the OC and quarterbacks coach at Utah. So yeah, he's an offensive guy. Scheme-wise, we're looking at a Stanford offense that is not at all similar to the Harbaugh-Shaw era. Taylor wants to get to the line fast, he wants to spread the defense out and use a mobile quarterback to run the ball. Now, I do have some issues with the offensive scheme they put on tape last week, but we will get more into that when we get to the next segment. And I tried to listen to Coach Taylor's presser to get some tidbits about him to put in the video, and man, I don't know how anyone gets fired up to play for that guy. Possibly the most boring sounding coach I have ever heard. So let's just skip forward and meet the Stanford offense. Alright, so like I mentioned earlier, I do have some issues with the scheme that Stanford put on tape last week against Hawaii, particularly as it relates to USC and the Trojan defense. What I mean by that is Stanford's team speed is not on par with even the middle of the pack of the Pac-12, let alone USC. So seeing them run as many options and sweeps behind the line of scrimmage as they did is a little confusing. The Stanford offense makes a big effort to get to the line quickly, but the plays themselves take an unbelievable amount of time to develop. Even some of their basic runs are these lateral, slow developing plays that against our defense will not work. We have far too much speed for that. We'll talk more about Stanford QB Ashton Daniels more in a sec here, but the design quarterback run game is a massive part of this offense, and two things here. One, he's not that good of a runner, and two, if they run the ball with him the same way against us as they did against UH, he's not going to be healthy by the end of the game. He was just blindly slamming into defenders over and over again. Man, especially with Tackett on the loose out there, he needs to be extremely careful or he will not finish this game. But part of me almost wonders if Stanford is going to pull a fast one like they did last year and run something completely different, because stylistically that makes no sense in my opinion. And aside from those types of plays, this offense also runs a lot of read option. They really like to target the middle of the field, and they look to get their quarterback out on the move as much as possible, so look for that in this one as well. But we mentioned him earlier, let's meet the Stanford quarterback, Ashton Daniels. So Ashton is a first-year starter. He is a run-first type of quarterback, but he does excel in the short game. He can throw it pretty well in that intermediate part of the field. The SC defense will more than likely force Daniels to prove that he can beat them with the deep ball before committing guys to sit back. In the game against Hawaii, he did show the ability to go 1-2-3 in his progression, so the Trojan secondary has to stick with it until the whistle blows. Ashton had a pretty nice day overall throwing the ball against Hawaii. There weren't any wow throws, but it was a pretty smooth operation overall. Now, looking at the Stanford offensive skill guys, they're pretty light at running back. EJ Smith is extremely overrated in my opinion. There's only one reason people rate him highly, it's because of his last name. The way he shies away from contact as a running back is very strange. Casey Filkins is another guy you'll see get some run at running back. They'll get him the ball in reverses and sweeps as well. He's a very patient runner. He had a lot of success last week against Hawaii. As always, their wideouts are tall, with the top 3 guys being 6'2", 6'2", and 6'5", respectively. But when you're talking about the Stanford passing game, the only real weapon worth noting here is senior tight end Benjamin Urasek. This is an NFL guy right here, 6'4", 242, great hands, great blocker, good after the catch, great at finding open holes in the coverage, and he also seems to have fantastic chemistry with his quarterback. This guy was their entire passing offense last week. So we'll see what Grinch's game plan is to slow down this guy. This seems like a great time to see what Zion Branch has got. He seems perfectly built for situations like this. Just in general, would definitely prefer a bigger body on this guy if and when he starts to become a problem. But moving to the offensive line here, lots of new faces starting in this group. They weren't great as pass blockers last week, especially on the inside with their guards, grading at a 25 and 39 respectively per PFF, which goes without saying is just god-awful. And the tackles weren't too much better. And this isn't that mobile of an offensive line unit either. They're a younger group than we're used to seeing from Stanford. And truth be told, they've got some big mistakes in them. I'm expecting huge days from Jamil Muhammad and Barry Alexander yet again. Alright, so to summarize the Stanford offense, they have a quarterback that can run it pretty well but not great. The offensive line is a huge question mark. The wideouts are tall, but there's nothing to be scared of there. Benjamin Urasek is the key to stopping Stanford. They're going to want to play through him. They're going to see the Grinch tape from last year with Kincaid and Mayer tearing us up. And more than likely, that's going to be their game plan. So stop Urasek, stop the offense. Okay, now flipping it over to the Stanford defense. The base defense for new defensive coordinator Bobby April was a hybrid 4-2-5 last week against Hawaii. They really sat back in coverage and dared UH to run the ball. It'll be interesting to see what approach they have this week. I fully expect a much more complex game plan from them. They did bring defensive backs on blitzes more often than I would have thought in the game against Hawaii. But hearing Coach Taylor and a few of the players talk this week, they all mentioned multiple times about getting pressure and bringing Caleb down. So I'd expect them to bring a lot of pressure to increase their odds of sacking Caleb, which of course leaves them wide open for big plays when Caleb inevitably breaks free and creates a big play. Alright, so looking at the personnel here, they are led up front by a guy that has topped the wish list for many Trojan fans in the last 2 off seasons in true sophomore David Bailey. This is the best player on the Stanford defense, full stop. He's just a playmaker, he's strong in the run game, he's a great athlete, he played the majority of his snaps on the defensive line, but he also played 10 snaps in the slot and coverage. That tells you what kind of athleticism he's got. Big time player. He's the one that needs to be highlighted pre-snap. We have to know where he's at all times. The same way that Benjamin Urasek is the key to the Stanford offense, David Bailey is to the Stanford defense. He was their highest graded player last week per PFF. Know where he's at, take him out of the game. Now looking at the linebackers, Gathan Bernadelle is a guy that's going to have a rough time in this one. His horizontal speed is terribly lacking. He's not great in space. I mean, he had some brutal reps out there. He played 71 snaps for the Stanford D. He had a 58 run defense grade, a 24 tackling grade, 54 pass rush grade, and a 40 grade in coverage. I mean, oof. Not great. We know what Lincoln Riley does to good linebackers. This poor kid's going to get eaten alive out there. The running backs are going to give him fits, and God help him if he ends up in the slot on a play or two. So look for big number 0 to be in the trail position all day for Stanford. All right, so we'll get to the secondary in a second, but this Cardinal defense is just slow. Aside from David Bailey, there's no one in the front 7 that makes you worry at all. I mean, they're going to be completely overmatched in this one. Now talking about the Stanford secondary, this definitely is the strength of the Stanford defense. But even then, this group wasn't great against Hawaii. The 2 safeties, Scotty Edwards and Jimmy Wyrick, are both playmakers that have good ball skills and are pretty solid tacklers. They like to blitz those 2 guys a lot. But man, the corners don't impress on film. Stanford was able to contain the Hawaii passing game at times because of the number of players they committed to coverage. When the corners would get into isolated one-on-one situations, they would get burnt. I just don't see a world where those guys go one-on-one with any of our wideouts and win on an even semi-consistent basis. So yeah, overall the Stanford defense, I do expect them to be hyper-aggressive in this one to try to get Caleb down. They've got 2 good safeties. David Bailey's a beast, as we all know. The rest of it, extremely iffy. I think we're going to score a lot of points in this one. Alright, now it's time for G's keys to the game. And as always, we'll start here with the offense. So the first one I have here is screen them to death. Again, I think this Stanford defense is going to bring a lot of pressure. They'll bring the safeties, they'll bring corners. All it takes is one perfectly timed screen and we're taking it to the house. All right, so my second key is establish the run early. I really liked the offensive game plan last week, especially when compared to the first game. I feel like we got the run going early in that one. So let's feed the ball to Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones, make them prove they can stop the run game. This is a Stanford defense that does not have depth. Wear them down, and it'll pay off in the fourth quarter. All right, and key number 3 is O-line progression. I thought we saw a big jump from game 1 to game 2 in terms of communication. I want to see that again this week. These guys are getting more and more reps together every week, so let's see them put it all together and have a complete performance in this one. All right, now moving over to the defense, the first key here is neutralize Urasek. I told you earlier, he is the Stanford offense. He's their best player by far. It runs through him. Take him out of the game, you stop the offense entirely. Key number 2 is quarterback contain. Ashton Daniels is going to try to get out of the pocket. He's going to try to run. On 3rd and 22, you cannot let him escape the pocket and have a free path to get a first down. Be patient, set the edge, and when you get your hands on him, bring him down. All right, and key number 3 is turnovers. As we all know, turnovers are the key to Alex Grinch's defense. It's what he prides himself on. You're going up against a young kid at quarterback with a shaky offensive line. There's going to be opportunities for turnovers. You got to catch the ball when he throws it to you. And if the ball squirts out on the ground, you got to jump on it and get it. The Stanford offense is going to have a hard time enough as it is. If you get a few turnovers on him, this game could get out of hand really early. All right, guys, so those were G's keys. Now let's talk about the score prediction. I have been agonizingly close in the first 2 games with my score predictions, so hopefully this time I can fully nail it. We'll have to see. I do think this Stanford team is just entirely outmatched, and seeing what the USC offense put on tape last week, I mean, we're hitting a different level. And I also think that the USC defense, especially the front 7, is coming into its own as well. So I have this being a complete performance by the Trojans, no second half let up like last year, and I have USC winning 58-17. Make sure to let me know your score predictions down below. But guys, that will do it for game preview number 3. Of course, USC's final game against Stanford for the foreseeable future. I'm going to miss this matchup. I look forward to it every single year. Again, make sure to let me know your thoughts about Stanford and the rivalry game down below, as well as your score prediction. And guys, that will do it for me today. If you did happen to enjoy this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do want to help support the channel in an even bigger way, you can do so over on the Trojan Blade Patreon for only $1 a month. Thank you all so much for all your support. You're all awesome, and as always, take care and fight on.